In the last couple of lessons, we kind of had like a primer on levels. And so let's do a little bit of a primer on curves. Levels and curves do much the same thing, except curves allows you more control. It's kind of like, well, it's like training wheels on a bike. I remember when I was really young and I had training wheels on my bike. My dad took them off. I couldn't quite figure out, how to do it. I kept falling over. So my dad, for a while, would hold on to the back fender and run with me as I rode and kind of give me that security. And I remember one day I was riding, it was really cool, and I turned around to kind of say, hey, this is fun. And I see my dad about a half a block away. He had let go, and he was just laughing because I was doing it. Of course, I immediately fell over. When you get into curves, the training wheels are off. You can crash and burn if you want to. So our example, let's play around with in this lesson, is called Flowers JPEG. It's a JPEG image, and open that up in your exercise files. So we have down here our background. Let's go ahead and either click the half moon icon here or go up here. It's right there if you are in the panel. And there you go. It's an interesting item. In curves, you have somewhat what you saw in levels. You have a histogram right here. You even have two sliders here and here that, like levels, allow you to control the clip of the black and the white. But here's one of the big differences. In levels, you had three sliders. You had a black, white, and a midtone. And you could move them, but they were kind of like trains on a track. They didn't go up, down, left, and right. They just went left and right. But you have more control here. Now look at here, this gray line. It goes from grayscale here to white. And you have another one that goes up this way. This one represents what's happening now with the image. This one here represents how we're going to change it. So what we do is we put points on the line and then we change it. Let me show you one more thing here. Notice we have a 1, 2, 3, 4 grid. And if I come over here, I now have a 10. Now I held on the Alt key and just clicked in that area. I like a 10. It doesn't really make any difference, but it gives me more visual reference points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right on this line right there, right in the center. Now that creates an anchor point that can bend the line like a rubber band. Now watch the image when I begin moving that line up now. Now I can do that with my arrow keys too, which is pretty cool. It gets lighter. But look at the relationship. I'm saying to the computer, push that up. And see what happens when you push up? The gradient gets lighter. So you're lightening the image up. Think about it this way. If all I do in curves is put a point right in the middle, just like that, and I basically move it up and down, I might as well go back to levels, because that's exactly what levels does. Levels restriction is it can only go one way or the other, left or right. So if all I go is up and down, I've got levels, I might as well go back. But I have control of this point. If you want to go crazy, I can move it any way I want. Which, like taking the training wheels off of your bike, gives you a lot of control, but you can crash pretty fast too. Now let's get rid of that one point. Easiest way to do that is just Control-click, and it'll go away. I can have as many points on this line as I want to. Now, one of the lessons in our photo restoration course, I talk about using curves to sharpen an image. I'll show you that real quick. Put a point back right there. Now come up here and put a point right about at the midpoint between here and here. That's kind of like the midtones. Now when I move that point up or down, it creates what's called an S-curve. If I start moving it up with my arrow keys, watch the image. Now, this image doesn't need any sharpening. But in a sense, it is creating more contrast in this image. Contrast on a two-dimensional surface exists because I see a difference between this area, say right here, and that area right there. If the difference between light and dark gets more pronounced, I'm thinking there is more contrast or even more sharpening there. And so we call this a reverse S curve. So let's say you have an image and it needs a little bit more contrast. This would be one thing that you could do to make it work for you. If I want to, let's go ahead and do this. Let's Control-click on these again to get rid of them. Probably the easiest way to understand how curves functions is to do this. I'm going to grab this point up here. I'm going to drag it all the way down. This image has pixels in it with brightness ranges that go from here to here. Make them all black. Turn them all off. If I click here and move this up, I'm getting a negative because I'm saying to the computer, areas that were white here are now black. And areas that were black here are now white. I have reversed the curve. Now, the easiest way to get back is click this button right here, and it resets curves. Curves gives us tremendous control over an image. We even have a button over here that looks like a hand, and if you click it and come over into the image, you can see where it is actually on the image, and anytime you want to actually put a point there, based on that brightness level of the color, you can hold the Alt key down and click, and it will allow you to put a point exactly there just by Alt clicking. Now again, that gets into things like color control, etc. Curves is an amazing tool, it really is. And we're not done. On to the next.